Today, we have a very special story to share. We'll be hearing from Clara Mendez, a woman who went through a truly transformative and unforgettable experience. She stood on the edge of life and death, and her spiritual journey during that time completely changed her perspective on life, love, and faith. Clara is here to share, in her own words, everything she experienced and learned during this intense period. But before we begin, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more inspiring and moving stories like this one. Be sure to hit the notification bell to get notified whenever a new video is available. Now, let's get ready to dive into Clara's incredible experience. I used to think I had everything under control. At 52, life was steady. A good job, a cozy home, 2 grown kids who, thankfully, were doing well. For years, I focused on keeping things running, paying the bills, and making sure everyone was where they needed to be. Somehow, in the shuffle, I'd lost touch with a part of myself I didn't even know I'd miss: my faith. Growing up, my mother was devout, always reminding me of the importance of prayer, grounding ourselves in God, and keeping a heart open to His guidance. I used to feel a sense of peace and certainty back then, a quiet reassurance that no matter how chaotic life got, something bigger was out there watching over us. But as I got older, that sense drifted away like mist in the morning sun. Over time, it wasn't so much that I stopped believing, but life's demands filled every inch of my days, leaving little space for reflection. Slowly, the rituals, the prayers, and even the Sunday services faded into the background. My daughter, Emma, would sometimes ask, "Mom, do you still believe?" I'd shrug, smiling softly, and tell her, "I don't need all the rituals. I believe in being a good person." And it was true, I thought. I believed in kindness, compassion, and living with purpose. But I hadn't realized that by letting my spirituality slip away, a part of my soul grew quiet, lonely even. Now, looking back, I can see how empty I'd become, as if some invisible light had dimmed without my noticing. Emma, too, saw it, often nudging me to go back to church or pick up a prayer book. But I always had an excuse: a busy schedule, too tired, maybe next time. In hindsight, I wonder if that quiet distance had been growing, waiting for something to shake me awake, something to remind me there was more to life than just getting through the day. The day it happened was supposed to be routine, just a minor procedure, a simple surgery to remove a gallstone. I wasn't nervous, not really. The doctors had reassured me multiple times, saying it was low risk and that I'd be home before I knew it. Emma and my son, Luke, had both come to the hospital to see me off. We exchanged lighthearted jokes and even took a selfie together. It felt comforting to have them there, laughing and relaxed. But as I lay there waiting, a small, strange unease began to creep in. The last thing I remember was lying on the surgical bed, counting down as the anesthesia took effect. When I closed my eyes, everything went dark. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp, intense pain jolted through my chest, dragging me halfway out of the fog. I couldn't move or speak, but I could feel the rush around me. The frantic urgency in the voices of the doctors, the cold metallic clatter of instruments, and a piercing alarm echoing somewhere nearby. Panic bubbled up inside me, yet I was trapped, unable to reach anyone, locked within my own mind. And then silence. It was as if a switch had flipped. The pain, the panic, everything just stopped. I felt myself slipping away, as though I were floating up and out of my body. I could see the doctors working on me, their faces strained, focused, as they called out instructions to each other. One nurse squeezed Emma's shoulder in the hallway outside, murmuring reassurances, her face filled with worry. I saw Emma cover her mouth, her eyes widening in shock. I wanted to reach out to tell her I was okay, but my hand passed right through her, a strange, chilling sensation that left me feeling like a ghost in the room. Suddenly, it didn't matter. My fear dissolved, replaced by a calm so profound it was almost like being held. I felt weightless, as if I'd slipped into another layer of existence where pain and worry couldn't touch me. Everything I had ever feared melted away, replaced by a warm, encompassing peace that felt like home, a feeling I hadn't experienced in years. As I drifted further away from my physical self, a light, soft but beckoning, appeared, growing larger and brighter. It wasn't blinding or overwhelming. Rather, it seemed to radiate a warmth that pulled me in, like a comforting embrace. The world around me dissolved, and in its place was a space of boundless tranquility. I wasn't just seeing this light. I felt it within me, filling every corner of my being with a peace that words can't quite capture. For the first time in years, all the anxieties, worries, and regrets faded away. I was no longer Clara Mendez, the woman weighed down by life's demands. Instead, I was simply me, stripped of all the layers and labels. It felt as though I was returning to a place I had always known but forgotten, a place where I was truly whole. Even as I floated there, I felt an intense clarity, as if every question I had ever asked about life, about purpose, was answered in that very moment, though I couldn't have told you how or why. As I moved deeper into this serene dimension, familiar faces began to appear. Faces of those who had long left this world. My grandmother, with her warm eyes and gentle smile, extended her hand toward me, as if she'd been waiting. "Clara, it's been so long," she said, her voice carrying a kindness that I could feel down to my soul. It wasn't just her presence that comforted me. It was the unspoken understanding between us. Somehow, without words, I knew that everything was going to be all right. But beyond her, I could sense something, or rather, someone greater, a presence that emanated pure love and understanding. I was drawn toward it, knowing instinctively that I was safe. The closer I came, the deeper the feeling of peace grew, like stepping into the arms of a trusted friend. In this space, my fears seemed small, insignificant. Here, I could have stayed forever, suspended in this profound sense of belonging. Yet, even as I soaked in this bliss, a part of me whispered questions. Was this really it? Was I meant to go back, or was this my final resting place? As these thoughts emerged, a gentle but commanding voice seemed to echo within me, though no words were spoken. It was as though my own spirit was answering, urging me to surrender to this moment, to let go and trust in something beyond myself. In the midst of this boundless peace, a presence unlike anything I'd ever felt before began to take shape. A figure emerged from the light, radiating warmth and love in a way that felt almost overwhelming. As the figure drew closer, I knew, instinctively and without a doubt, that I was in the presence of Jesus. His face was gentle, familiar somehow, yet it was his eyes that drew me in, deep, compassionate, filled with an understanding beyond human words. They looked at me in a way that made me feel truly seen, like every part of me was understood and accepted. "Clara," he said softly, his voice as soothing as a lullaby. There was no judgment, only an embrace that I could feel in my soul. For the first time in years, I let go of the walls I'd built around myself. In that moment, all the memories I'd tucked away, all the doubts and questions I'd pushed aside, rose up and vanished, washed away by this overwhelming sense of mercy. I felt exposed, vulnerable, yet utterly safe, as if nothing I'd ever done could lessen his love for me. Tears welled up in my eyes, though I didn't fully understand why. I wanted to tell him so many things, to explain why I had drifted, to justify the years I'd spent disconnected from my faith. But he seemed to know already. He reached out, his hand hovering just above my shoulder, and I felt a warmth like sunlight breaking through after a storm. "You are loved," he said, his words more a feeling than a sound, reverberating deep within me. It was as though he were reminding me of something I had always known but forgotten, an ancient truth about the love that holds us all. In his presence, I saw flashes of my life, moments where I'd been lost, overwhelmed, or lonely. Each time, I realized now, There had been this same love surrounding me, even if I hadn't noticed it. It was there in the kindness of strangers, in the laughter of my children, in quiet moments when I'd felt unexpectedly at peace. Jesus showed me that this love had never left me. I had only drifted from it. And in that moment, all my excuses, all my fears and doubts felt so small. I understood that love and mercy were the true essence of everything, our greatest gifts, and perhaps the purpose of our lives. You're here because you've forgotten what it means to be truly loved, he said, and his words wrapped around me like a promise, filling me with a sense of belonging I hadn't felt in years. Just as I was basking in this indescribable sense of love, the scene around me began to shift. The warmth faded, replaced by an unsettling chill. I looked to Jesus, a question forming in my mind, but he held my gaze, his expression growing more solemn. In a moment, I was somewhere else, a place far removed from the light and warmth I had just felt. The air was heavy, thick with a sense of despair that hung over everything like a dark, impenetrable fog. I saw souls scattered in this shadowy realm, faces twisted in anguish, eyes hollow with a suffering that felt endless. They were reaching out, their hands grasping at nothing, lost in a torment that seemed to have no source yet was inescapable. It wasn't like any physical pain I'd ever known. It was deeper, almost like an emptiness that gnawed at them from within. I could feel their longing, their desperation for something they'd lost but couldn't name. Jesus' voice was gentle, yet filled with a gravity that made my heart ache. These are souls who have turned away from love, who sought to live for themselves alone, without connection, without compassion, he explained. They chose a life separate from the light, and now they dwell in the shadows they created. His words were heavy, each one sinking deep into my heart. I felt a sorrow beyond words, realizing that this place was not something imposed but a consequence of choices. A life lived without love, without faith, without reaching beyond the self. As I watched, I felt my own fears rise, a creeping dread that this fate could await anyone who allowed themselves to drift away from the light, as I had. I thought of all the times I'd ignored the quiet call to prayer, the gentle nudges to reconnect with my spirit. The realization was like a cold wind against my skin, making me shiver. I looked to Jesus, my voice trembling as I asked, "Could this happen to me? Is this where I was headed?" He looked at me with profound compassion, his eyes filled with understanding. "Clara, it's never too late to return to the light. You have the power to choose love, to choose faith, to choose a life connected to others." His words struck me like a revelation, showing me the depth of mercy that existed even for those who had strayed. It wasn't too late for them, or for me. The scene began to dissolve, and the chill lifted as I felt myself returning to that place of peace. Yet the images of that shadowed realm lingered, etched deeply into my heart. I knew, beyond any doubt, that I could not ignore what I had seen. It was a call, a reminder, and a warning all at once, urging me to live in a way that embraced love and the light I had once known so intimately. As the darkness faded, I felt a warm light envelop me once more, lifting me higher, away from the shadows and into a realm that seemed to pulse with life itself. Colors I'd never seen on earth radiated all around me, vibrant yet soothing, filling my vision with a beauty that felt almost otherworldly. Flowers and hues beyond my imagination bloomed in lush meadows, their scent sweet and comforting, each petal seeming to hum with its own quiet song. Streams of crystal-clear water flowed gently through the landscape, their sounds mingling with soft, melodic whispers that I could only describe as pure joy. I looked around, awestruck by the peace and harmony that filled this place. Every breath I took seemed to draw in the very essence of love, filling me with a bliss so profound it was almost overwhelming. This wasn't just a place, it was a feeling, an experience of being embraced by the divine itself. Each step I took, I felt lighter, as if the burdens I'd carried all my life had been lifted, leaving only pure contentment and gratitude. In the distance, I saw figures moving, their presence ethereal and serene. These souls were radiant, filled with a joy that radiated from within, yet their presence wasn't boastful or separate. They were simply part of this beautiful whole. As I moved closer, one of them turned to me, and her face broke into a gentle, knowing smile. It was my mother. "Clara, I knew you'd make it here," she said, her voice soft but filled with pride. She didn't need to explain anything. The peace on her face said it all. This was her home, the place she had told me about when I was a child. A place beyond pain, beyond fear. In that moment, a deep sense of belonging filled me. I realized that this was where all souls yearned to be, that our true home wasn't just the earthly life we know, but this heavenly realm that waited beyond. It was a place where love was the only language, where forgiveness was as natural as breathing, and where unity was woven into the very fabric of existence. I understood, too, that this place wasn't limited to the afterlife. Glimpses of it could be felt on earth, in the love we share, in the compassion we offer, in the beauty of small, everyday moments. Jesus appeared beside me again, his presence so gentle yet powerful. He didn't need to say anything, but his eyes conveyed a message I understood instinctively. This is what awaits those who choose love, who live their lives in harmony with the light. A sense of purpose welled up within me, and I realized that this experience was a gift, a reminder of what I could bring back with me to share with others. A glimpse of heaven's beauty, of the paradise that is always within reach when we open our hearts. I knew then that I had been shown both ends of existence, the shadow and the light, the consequence of isolation and the reward of connection. This vision wasn't just a promise of an afterlife. It was an invitation to live fully, openly, and with a love that transcends. As I stood in this place of unimaginable beauty, a sudden shift occurred, and the light dimmed, though it was still present. Jesus stood beside me, his expression now serious, his gaze piercing as he looked into the distance. A sense of urgency filled the air, and I felt the peace around me give way to an alertness, a kind of readiness, as if I was being prepared for something vital. He turned to me, his voice gentle yet firm, carrying a weight that left no room for doubt. "Clara," he said, "you need to understand what lies ahead in your world. There will come a time of great confusion, a time when many will seek answers in their desperation, and in that time, a leader will rise." As he spoke, an image formed in my mind. A figure standing before crowds, their face charismatic, almost magnetic. This person's presence was powerful, drawing people in with promises of hope, of unity, of peace in a chaotic world. And yet, as I looked closer, I saw something unsettling, a darkness that lay hidden beneath the charm, subtle but deeply rooted. "He will appear as a savior," Jesus continued, speaking words that comfort, that seem to heal the wounds of a divided world. "But his intentions are not what they seem. He comes not from the light but from shadows, seeking to lead people away from truth, away from love." I felt a chill as these words settled within me, realizing that this leader was not just an ordinary figure but a deceptive force, someone who would manipulate the hopes and fears of many, guiding them away from the true path. I looked at Jesus, a question heavy in my heart. But how will people know? How will they see through him? His gaze softened, filled with both compassion and determination. Those who stay close to the light, who nurture their faith and live with discernment, will recognize the emptiness in his promises. They will see that his words are hollow, that his vision is one of control, not compassion. I felt a mixture of sadness and responsibility as I absorbed his warning. This wasn't just a distant prophecy. It felt close, as if it were already beginning. The vision faded, but the urgency lingered in my heart. Jesus placed his hand over mine, his touch warm, grounding me. "Clara, when you return, you must share this warning. Remind people to keep their hearts open to the light, to stay connected to their faith, for only then will they find the strength to resist the deceptions that will come." A resolve formed within me, a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. I knew that this experience wasn't meant for me alone. I was being called to return, to carry this message, to remind others of the importance of staying grounded in love and faith. This warning was a gift, a chance to prepare, to help others recognize the truth, even when it may be obscured by the illusions of a world searching for salvation in all the wrong places. As the vision of the deceptive leader faded, a new feeling took hold within me, an undeniable, almost physical pull back to my life. I looked at Jesus, feeling the weight of what he'd shown me, and an ache grew in my heart. A part of me longed to stay in this realm of love and peace forever, to remain wrapped in this sense of belonging that I hadn't felt for so long. But I could sense that my journey here had a purpose, and that purpose was calling me back to earth. Jesus' expression was kind but resolute, as though he understood both my longing to stay and the mission I was being entrusted with. "Clara," he began, his voice a gentle command, "you have been given this experience for a reason. It is time for you to return, to share what you have seen, and to remind others of the path that leads to true peace." His words filled me with a profound sense of responsibility. I knew then that this wasn't just about me. This experience, this gift of insight, was meant to be shared. But how? I asked, a hint of desperation in my voice. How can I possibly convey all that I've seen, all that I've felt? People won't understand. They'll think I've lost my mind. Jesus' gaze held mine, steady and unwavering. "Speak from your heart, Clara. Share your story, and the truth will resonate with those who need to hear it. Not everyone will listen, but those who do will find their way back to the light through your words." A profound clarity settled over me, mingling with an unexpected apprehension. I saw glimpses of the challenge ahead, friends and family looking at me with doubt, some even with dismissal. I imagined standing before groups, trying to put this indescribable experience into words. But beneath the anxiety, there was an unwavering purpose, a fire that I knew would sustain me. This wasn't about convincing everyone. It was about planting seeds, about offering a glimpse of something greater to those willing to receive it. I nodded, accepting the mission, though I knew it wouldn't be easy. "I'll do it," I whispered, the words filled with a new strength. Jesus' face softened, a trace of a smile in his eyes, and I felt his blessing wash over me, filling me with a peace that made the task ahead seem less daunting. He placed a hand over my heart, and for a moment, all the love, the mercy, and the guidance I had experienced were sealed within me, as if they would remain with me as long as I lived. "Remember, Clara," he said, his voice echoing softly, "you are never alone. My love will be with you, and through you, others will find their way." With those words, I felt a tug, a gentle but insistent pull drawing me back, away from the light, away from the warmth, and toward the physical world that awaited me. The vision around me blurred, and the sensations of my body, my heartbeat, my breaths, the cold sterility of the hospital room, began to return. The journey was over, but the mission had only just begun. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the hospital, blinking under the harsh fluorescent lights. The soft hum of machines surrounded me, and I could feel the weight of my body, something I hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. I took a shaky breath, feeling both overwhelmed and strangely detached, as if a part of me hadn't fully returned. My children, Emma and Luke, were by my side, their faces painted with relief and worry, their hands clutching mine as though afraid I'd slip away again. "Mom, you're back," Emma whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Luke gave me a small, relieved smile, his hand gripping my shoulder. I looked into their eyes, feeling a love so intense it brought tears to my own. But along with that love was a pressing urgency, a need to share what I'd seen, to convey even a fraction of the profound truth I had experienced. Yet, as I opened my mouth to speak, words failed me. How could I explain something so immense, so beyond what they'd ever understand? The days that followed were filled with questions from doctors and nurses, each one marveling at my recovery. "You were gone for several minutes," one nurse said in awe, her gaze steady but curious. "It's a miracle you're here, Mrs. Mendez." I nodded, sensing the truth of her words, but still struggling to find the courage to speak of what had happened. Each attempt felt clumsy, inadequate, as if my human language couldn't hold the vastness of what I'd seen. Back at home, I spent long hours reflecting, trying to organize my thoughts. I'd sit with Emma and Luke, wanting to tell them, wanting to somehow bring them into the experience, but whenever I began, my voice faltered. How could I describe the peace, the light, the warnings, and the love that had enveloped me? It was like trying to capture sunlight in a bottle. Impossible, yet somehow I had to try. One evening, Emma noticed my silence and sat beside me, her gaze gentle but firm. "Mom, you've been different since the surgery. I can see it in your eyes. What happened to you?" Her question broke something open in me, and for the first time, I took her hand, searching for the right words. "Emma, I saw things I can't fully explain, but I know I was meant to share them. I was shown a place of peace, of love beyond anything here, and a darkness that waits for those who lose their way." Her eyes widened, and I could see both awe and skepticism. Yet she listened, really listened, as I struggled to put my experience into words. And with every word, I felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't complete, but it was a start. In that moment, I realized that this journey of sharing would be just as challenging as the experience itself, but I was ready to try. One story, one conversation, one heart at a time. As days turned into weeks, the urgency within me only grew stronger. I began sharing my experience with close friends, then with members of my church, each conversation giving me a bit more courage, even if my words often felt clumsy. At first, people looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. But as I spoke, something incredible started to happen. Some would nod, their eyes bright with recognition, as if a long-buried memory had resurfaced. Others reached out to me later, saying my words had touched a part of them they'd forgotten existed. I realized that this wasn't just about recounting a near-death experience. It was about helping others reconnect with the spiritual essence within them, that quiet voice we so often ignore. My mission, I understood now, was to remind people of their own light, to guide them back to a faith that was as natural as breathing. The fear of judgment began to fade, replaced by a purpose that felt like an anchor, steadying me in moments of doubt. One Sunday after service, our pastor invited me to share my story with the congregation. Standing at the front, looking out over familiar faces, some supportive, others skeptical, I took a deep breath and began. I had a glimpse of what lies beyond, of both the light and the darkness. I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I was shown that life is more than just getting by. It's about living in harmony with love, with compassion, with faith. I told them about the peace, the beauty of heaven, and the warning I had received, the deception that awaited those who drift from love and truth. Afterward, people came up to me, sharing their own struggles, their own doubts, as if my story had unlocked something within them. A woman I'd known for years confided in me, her voice barely a whisper, that she, too, had felt a spiritual distance growing but had been afraid to address it. An older man, eyes glistening with tears, simply hugged me, saying, "Thank you for reminding me. I'd forgotten." These encounters filled me with a deep gratitude, a sense of purpose I hadn't known I was missing. The more I shared, the more I felt that this was just the beginning. My mission wasn't to convince or preach, but to awaken, to spark a reminder of the connection we all share with the divine. I made a promise to myself, and in my heart, to Jesus, that I would keep going. I would keep sharing, no matter how difficult, no matter who listened. The experience had changed me irrevocably. I saw the world through new eyes, every interaction laced with a kindness, a patience that hadn't been there before. Small things mattered. Smiling at a stranger, reaching out to those in need, spending time in quiet reflection. It all mattered. I knew now that life was a precious gift, that each moment was an opportunity to bring light into the world, no matter how dark it might sometimes seem. And as I walked this path, sharing my story whenever and wherever I could, I felt the presence of that love, that mercy, guiding me, encouraging me, reminding me that I was never truly alone. Each day was a new chance to fulfill the mission given to me, to live a life of faith, hope, and love. A life that would, hopefully, inspire others to find their own path back to the light. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and watch this next story. It's truly moving.